So in the last episode we looked at the voltage regulator, we changed that, and we saw that, well, it didn't really address the issue. We still showed that there was fuel in the tank even though we drained the tank down. So the next thing, I've got a fuel sender that goes in the tank. To access this, obviously you open the boot, we drained the tank down, and we're going to remove this back panel here. There's looks like 4 flathead screws in each corner. Oh, there's one there as well, so we've got 5. Don't believe this little light is actually affixed to the rear bulkhead there, but we'll take those screws out and we'll gain access to the sender unit. So that's those few screws out. There was actually more than I thought. There was 3 in the top, 2 and 2, so there was, what's that, 3, 4, 5, there was 7 screws in total. However, I was missing one and we only had 5. And here it is. Here's the sender unit. On the back we've got the power, or the ground, and the power from the gauge basically. We'll pop these off. There's a retaining ring, we'll tap that out and we should be able to remove the sender. So we'll just say the power's off. So that black one, the ground, that's a female. The sender is the green one, both females. We'll just remember that, how they go. Best thing to do is take a picture so you don't forget. So here's the new sender unit. As you can see, you've got a seal, the retaining cap and the sender unit. This is from Rimmer Brothers. TKC 2053, that's the part number. So just balance the camera there in the back of the car. Obviously, like I say, we've turned the power off, the battery's isolated. The fuel is also being drained from the tank. Got this retaining ring here, which has 3 little tabs here, here and here. And we're just going to tap it anti-clockwise. I don't think it needs much. And that should, I mean, if you need to use a soft face mallet, do that, but it should just be a case of, there you go. One good tap, the ring comes out. We should have access to the sender now. Try and get that out without bending anything. There we go, we've got it out, and we'll inspect that and see what's wrong with it. And there we go, there's inside the tank. It's all drained out. So we'll just sit down here and have a look at it. As you can see, we've got the sealing ring. Quite a bit of surface corrosion on it. There's the travel. But what we have got, which is quite common in old ones, we have got fuel inside the float, which will affect. So we'll just pop this off. We have got fuel. It's quite hard to see there. Let's see if I can hold it up. There, you can just see it in the bottom. There is fuel. So the float itself has been compromised. Normally you'd expect to see that sort of, I'd imagine, sit lower, so you'd have a lower reading, but we're actually getting a higher reading. Could be that any of these components have failed. I don't know, high resistance on the connection or something. The float's operating fairly free. That's not to say that since we removed it there, it's worked itself free a little bit. But we'll put the new one in, put some fuel in the tank, and we'll test it again. So as before, we've got 2 connections on the back. The one on the left there, labelled T, transitions through into the sender unit, which is on that arm. And we've got the other one here. I imagine the one on the right is the ground, and the one on the left is the sender, which is reading the signal generated by the arm. So just like when we removed it, be very careful as we put it in, not to bend anything. So push that through. Come in, try and get it all in. And you just sort of align everything up, and there it goes. It's in there like that. And then we put the retaining ring on and tap it clockwise. Obviously we're not going to leave it like that, we're going to orientate it correctly, and then the two cables go back on. So for orientation, I'm assuming it's like this. We'll soon find out once it's in the car, but this seems to give the best sweep and travel on the float. Let's see if I can put the camera down and have a look. As you can see, when we're in this position here, that'll be full and that's empty. Any other orientation doesn't really seem to work. I mean, that one possibly, that being empty, but in theory it's the same. I don't know, we'll give it a go, we'll soon see. So after fiddling around for a bit, I'm pretty confident that it's this way around. So that the earth is to the right. It doesn't really give any instructions, and the original one that I've pulled out, it sort of works the same, so I'm just going to go with it. If it doesn't work, we'll do it a different way. But for now, I'm happy that it's going to be that way. I'm sure there's some of you that have done it before, and I've already done it wrong, but it's the only way it seems to fit. So we're going to go with that for now. As I said, I don't know if I mentioned, but there's a sealing ring behind there as well. I've just put in like a big flat O-ring, and then there's the retaining locking tab that goes in, and that taps in clockwise. That just seats it. We'll put the fuel back in, before I put the fuel back in, I'll turn the ignition back on. We'll just see where the fuel gauge sits. It should say 0. There's no fuel in there. The arm is at the bottom. If it doesn't, then I'm thinking more on the electronic side as opposed to the sender or the regulator. It could be an earth, but I don't know. I'm getting a good earth on the multimeter, but we'll take it from there. I'm hoping that this is it fixed. Okay, so that's it on. I put the power back on. You see there the lamp's on. Come around to the front here, and the gauge for the first time is showing 0. So we'll turn the ignition off and we'll put the fuel back in. And hopefully that's it done. So it's hard to tell, I've just taken it out because it's hard to show it, but that's the orientation I've got it in. That ground just keeps popping off there, but we'll get that back on. Now, I'll show you the inside. So now how easy it's going to be to see, if at all. Just I'm just going to move the gauge up and down. You'll be able to see it move. So that's empty and that's full. You see the gauge going up, and that's empty again. And that's about half a tank. And back to empty. So I'm happy that we've got it to work. It's just a case of putting some fuel in. I think the tank's pretty much just empty. Let's say when you put about probably 6-7 litres in there. So the way I've got it, the W, you can't really see it, the W is on the far left. So we'll put that back in. So that's all secured back on. Can't really put the W at the far left, which I'd like because of the orientation of the fittings. So it's slightly higher, more 11 o'clock, half 10 position. Got both cables on, and just in case of putting this back panel back on, the screws, and that's it. So in the end, what I went for was the W was just slightly higher than the 9 o'clock position. The T, as we at the top there, the green wire, the earth on the right. The T's like just shy of the 12. I found if I went too far, because there's like 3 tabs that it sits in as well, you can't really orientated fully. If you go to the other side of the tabs, it's showing half a tank now. I pulled 6-7 litres out of it. That's not half a tank. On the left of it, yeah, it's probably slightly lower than I'd like, but I'd rather have a lower indication and have more fuel than a higher indication and actually have less fuel, if you see what I mean. I'm sure you could probably bend the float and spend all day tinkering with it, but for my needs, it's showing all right. I'll show you inside once I put this back panel on what the tank's showing. So there we are, that's the fuel gauge in the end. Just sitting off the 0. If we turn the ignition off there, you see the gauge does, I mean it's hard to see, but it does fall away. If we turn the ignition back on, it will rise. Very slowly though, but it is rising. So there we have it. That's the conclusion of that 3-part video, identifying why the fuel gauge was shown inaccurately. So what we did, we drained the fuel tank, we checked the voltage regulator, we replaced that, found that it wasn't being earthed. Changed that, earthed it, and it was still showing wrong. So we went to the back and we changed out the fuel sender for a brand new one. Now whether or not, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, whether or not having a voltage regulator unearthed for that long has damaged the fuel sender, I don't know. Whether it's just a combination of that was possibly the original one in the boot there, and it had failed long before, and the first thing they thought was change the regulator. That didn't work, and that was it. And I don't know. But anyway, I'm confident that we fixed that. If you've learned anything, that's great. Or if you're just here to follow along, even better. But yeah, that's the conclusion, and I'm happy with that.